The sun burned high above the endless red desert of planet Thalan. Its light fell on rolling dunes that stretched as far as the eye could see. The wind carried grains of sand that cut across the explorers' suits like tiny blades. For months they had searched this wasteland, chasing a rumor that no one believed. The rumor spoke of a hidden tomb buried under the sands, older than any known alien ruin, and built by human hands long before humans had reached the stars. Mira led the small expedition. She was an archaeologist with a calm voice and a mind that never stopped asking questions. Her team included Thomas, an engineer who believed in logic over legend, and Ryan, a young technician who carried a restless excitement in his heart. They had traveled across broken ridges, through electric storms and past ancient rock fields to reach this place. The local settlers called this region the Hollow Expanse. To them it was cursed ground. No machine worked for long here, and some swore they heard voices at night when the wind was quiet. Mira stood on a rocky rise with her scanner. Her short brown hair moved in the wind as she adjusted the device. The display showed faint magnetic patterns under the sand. They formed a perfect circle. It was not natural. She called Thomas over and pointed at the readings. His eyes narrowed as he studied them. He had seen many ruins on alien worlds, but never a pattern like this. Ryan began setting up the excavation drones, eager to uncover what lay below. As the machines dug, the ground trembled slightly. The sand sank inward, revealing the tip of a stone arch. With careful work, they cleared away more layers. The arch grew taller, showing carvings made of both straight and curved lines. Mira brushed her gloved hand across them. The symbols seemed familiar yet strange. Some looked like old Earth letters, others looked like alien glyphs. Thomas frowned as he examined them. He said they should mark the site and wait for authorization from Earth Command. Mira shook her head. She felt something important waited below, something that could not wait for months of approval. The drones cleared more sand, and soon an entrance appeared. It was shaped like a mouth, half open, leading into darkness. Cold air drifted out from within, carrying a faint metallic smell. Ryan placed light beacons along the edge, and pale white light filled the passage. The walls were smooth stone with long lines carved deep into them. They almost looked like veins. Mira took a step forward, her boots crunching on the sand. Thomas followed close behind, muttering about safety checks and oxygen levels. Ryan brought up the rear, holding a camera drone to record everything. As they entered, the sound of the desert faded. The tomb swallowed the noise completely. It was silent in a way that felt unnatural. Their lights reflected off the smooth walls, and strange shapes seemed to move just beyond their beams. Mira touched one of the carvings. It felt warm even though the air around it was cold. The line pulsed faintly under her fingers. She stepped back in surprise. Thomas checked his scanner, but it showed nothing unusual. He said the pulse was probably static energy. Mira was not convinced. They walked deeper. The passage curved downward like a spiral. The air pressure grew heavier. Ryan said his comms were breaking up and his voice cracked with static. Then they all heard something. It was faint at first, like a whisper carried by the wind. The sound came from ahead, from the dark below. It was not random noise. It sounded like words. Mira turned off her helmet speaker to listen better. The whisper grew clearer. It was saying her name. She froze. Thomas looked at her with wide eyes. He asked if she had said something, but she shook her head. Ryan looked pale. He said he heard his own name too. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then Mira gathered her courage and told them it might be an echo caused by their comms. She did not believe her own words, but they had to keep moving. The passage widened into a large chamber with pillars carved from the same red stone. The walls were covered with murals showing tall beings with long arms standing beside human figures. Some humans were holding bright objects that looked like stars. Ryan began recording everything. His camera drone floated between the pillars, its light flickering across the images. One mural showed a group of humans placing a glowing sphere inside a large door. Another showed a dark shape rising from the ground surrounded by the same star symbols. Mira studied the designs carefully. She noticed the dark shape appeared again and again, sometimes standing beside humans, sometimes above them. It was as if the ancient artists were telling a story of partnership and betrayal. Tomas found metal fragments near the floor. They looked like pieces of an old machine. He said the technology was far more advanced than anything seen in human colonies. He wondered how such material could exist on a planet that had never known Earth contact. Mira told him this could be the proof that humans had traveled far earlier than history recorded. Thomas refused to believe it. He said it was impossible. Ryan listened to them argue but stayed silent. He kept hearing faint words in his headset. Sometimes it was a voice calling softly. Sometimes it was a sound like breathing. Mira decided to move toward the far wall where a large doorway stood half buried in sand. The frame was covered with symbols that glowed faintly in the light. They seemed alive, shifting slowly like water. Thomas warned her not to touch anything, but curiosity drove her forward. She reached out and brushed her fingers across one of the glowing marks. The chamber lights flickered for a moment and the air grew colder. The whispering returned, stronger this time. It was not just voices but many at once, speaking in different tones and languages. Some words sounded ancient, others were clear. Ryan fell to his knees and covered his ears, saying it was too loud. Yet Thomas and Mira heard only faint whispers. It seemed the tomb was speaking differently to each of them. The light from Ryan's drone suddenly went out. Darkness filled the chamber. Only the glow from the symbols remained, lighting their faces in red and gold. Mira called out to Ryan, but his voice did not answer. Thomas activated his suit light and swept it across the floor. Ryan was gone. Panic rose in Thomas's chest, but Mira forced herself to stay calm. She said Ryan might have gone back up the tunnel when the noise started. Thomas nodded quickly, though his hands shook. They began to follow the path back toward the entrance. As they reached the tunnel, a sound stopped them. It was a single, clear voice coming from the chamber behind. The voice said, "Do not leave." Both froze in place. Thomas gripped his scanner and Mira turned slowly. The glowing symbols were brighter now. They formed new shapes that looked like eyes watching them. The air vibrated softly and the whispering began again, this time like a chant. Mira took a step forward despite Thomas's warning. She felt drawn toward the light. The voice spoke again, this time lower and closer. "You are not strangers. You are ours." Mira's suit sensors started to fail. The temperature readings jumped between freezing and burning. She felt dizzy and had to kneel. Thomas pulled her up and dragged her toward the exit. He shouted that the structure might be unstable. The floor trembled slightly and dust fell from the ceiling. As they ran up the spiral passage, the walls seemed to hum. The whispering followed them, growing softer as they climbed. At last, they reached the surface. The desert sun was still blazing, but it felt different now, almost distant. Ryan was standing outside near the equipment. He looked unharmed but pale. When they asked where he went, he said he never left the chamber. He said the whispers told him to wait outside because the tomb needed time to wake. Mira stared at him, unsure what to believe. Thomas scanned him for radiation or mental stress, but everything seemed normal. Yet Ryan's eyes looked strange. They reflected the sunlight like metal. He spoke slowly and said he could still hear the voices, but they were calm now. Mira turned toward the dark entrance. The cold air still drifted out, carrying a faint echo that sounded almost like a heartbeat. She felt both fear and wonder. She knew they had found something far greater than a ruin. She told Thomas to seal the entrance for the night. They would rest and enter again at sunrise. As the team set up camp, the wind howled across the dunes. Mira sat by the scanner staring at the readings. The magnetic field around the tomb was changing, pulsing in rhythm. Thomas said it could be interference. Ryan said it was breathing. When night fell, the stars came out one by one above the desert sky. Mira lay awake inside her tent, listening to the wind. For a moment, the wind faded completely, and she heard a soft whisper near her ear. It said her name again. She opened her eyes, but no one was there. The voice was gone, but the silence felt alive. Far beneath the sand, deep inside the tomb, the symbols began to glow once more. The forbidden tomb had awakened. The morning sun rose above the dunes of Thalon, painting the desert in gold. The wind had calmed, and the air carried a strange stillness. Mira stood near the sealed entrance of the tomb, her eyes fixed on the carvings they had uncovered. She felt uneasy. The events of the previous day kept repeating in her mind. The whispering, the glowing symbols, and Ryan's sudden disappearance had shaken the team. Yet something stronger than fear pushed her forward. She felt the tomb was waiting for her. Tomas was checking the equipment. His face looked tired, and his hands trembled slightly as he repaired one of the drones. He had not slept well. The whispers from the night before had reached his dreams. He told himself they were only echoes trapped in the tunnels. Ryan sat apart from them, staring at the sand with empty eyes. He said very little since morning. When Mira called his name, he answered slowly, as if listening to another voice inside his head. After breakfast, Mira gathered the team and said they would enter again. Thomas argued that they needed more people and heavier tools. He believed the tomb was unstable and dangerous. Mira listened but did not change her mind. She told them that if the carvings were real, they had found proof that humans had visited this world thousands of years before any known mission. Thomas sighed and agreed to go with her, unwilling to let her enter alone. Ryan nodded silently. They prepared their suits and activated the lights. The desert heat pressed on them as they stood before the dark opening. Mira touched the carvings again. The lines glowed faintly under her fingers, as if recognizing her. She felt a pulse that matched her heartbeat. Then she stepped inside. The air changed instantly. The temperature dropped and a faint hum filled the tunnel. Their footsteps echoed against the stone floor. The same spiral path led them downward. Thomas checked his scanner often, reading strange energy waves that came from deep below. The signal pattern was rhythmic, like breathing. He said it reminded him of organic activity. Mira replied that the structure might still be powered by some ancient system. Ryan followed quietly behind them. His camera drone floated above, recording every detail. The deeper they went, the stronger the whispers became. At first they sounded distant, but soon they were clear. It was not only one voice. It was many voices speaking together, sometimes in unison, sometimes in layers. The words shifted between languages, some of which Mira recognized from old Earth dialects. She could hear her name again, but now it sounded kind, almost guiding her forward. Thomas covered his ears and cursed under his breath. He said the noise was giving him a headache. Ryan, however, smiled faintly. He said the voices were trying to help. The passage opened into a massive chamber that none of them had seen before. The ceiling was high and shaped like a dome. The walls shimmered with lines of light that moved slowly across the surface. In the center stood a circle of tall pillars surrounding a stone platform. On the floor around the pillars were symbols shaped like stars and circles. Mira walked to the nearest pillar and saw markings of humans standing beside tall beings with long limbs. Each being carried a staff with a glowing crystal at the top. Above them were more symbols that seemed to describe movement through the stars. Ryan's drone flew higher to capture the murals. The moment its light touched the top of the dome, the whispering stopped. The silence that followed was heavy and deep. Then a single sound came from the center of the chamber. It was a low hum rising from the platform. Thomas aimed his scanner and gasped. The readings were off the chart. He said something alive or active was beneath that stone. Mira walked to the edge of the platform. She knelt and brushed away the thin layer of sand covering the surface. Underneath, she saw a large circle carved with precision. Inside, it was a pattern that looked like the map of stars around Earth's sun. Her breath caught as she realized one of the points was labeled with the ancient name of Earth. The markings were clearly human. She looked up at Thomas with wide eyes. He shook his head in disbelief. Ryan moved closer and whispered that the tomb was built by their ancestors. Suddenly, the light from their suits flickered. The air felt thick and a cold breeze moved across the chamber. From somewhere below, a new whisper rose, different from the rest. It was deep and calm, as if coming from a great distance. The voice spoke in clear English this time. It said, "You have returned." All three froze. Thomas lifted his weapon scanner, and Ryan lowered his head as if listening to a friend. Mira stood still, unable to speak. The voice came again, saying, "The children of the first world have come home." The platform in the center began to move. The circle split open, revealing stairs leading downward into another passage. Warm light shone from below. Mira's heart raced. She knew this was a new level, hidden even deeper. Thomas warned her to stop, but curiosity and wonder pushed her forward. She started down the stairs. The others followed reluctantly. The steps were made of metal, smooth and without rust. The light grew brighter as they descended. At the bottom, they entered a long hall lined with statues. Each statue was human, wearing armor of unknown design. The faces were calm and noble. Some looked old, others young, but every statue held the same expression of quiet strength. Mira walked slowly, studying each one. She felt as if they were watching her. At the end of the hall stood a large door made of black stone. It was covered with glowing blue lines that pulsed like veins. Above the door were words written in ancient Earth language. Mira translated them aloud. "Here sleeps the first guardian." Ryan stepped forward. He placed his hand on the door. The lines glowed brighter under his touch. Thomas shouted for him to stop, but Ryan did not move. He said softly that the whispers told him to open it. The door began to vibrate. A deep hum filled the hall. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the statues seemed to shift slightly. Mira ran to Ryan and pulled him away, but the door did not stop. The blue lines turned white, and the entire surface slid open with a heavy sound. Inside was darkness, but it was not empty. A faint golden light appeared in the center, floating above a stone platform. The light grew, revealing a figure lying motionless inside a transparent field. It looked human. The armor was similar to the statues, but more refined, with symbols that matched those outside. The figure's face was calm, almost peaceful. Tomas scanned it and said it was impossible. The body showed signs of life, yet it had been there for thousands of years. Mira stepped closer. The whispers were now gentle, surrounding her like a soft wind. She felt no fear, only awe. She reached out toward the field, but the moment her hand came near, the light flared and a burst of sound filled the hall. The voice spoke again, louder than before. The guardian stirs. The seal is broken. The air shook with power. Thomas grabbed Mira and pulled her back. The statues along the walls began to glow, their eyes shining with white light. Ryan fell to his knees, clutching his head. He cried out that the guardian was speaking to him directly. Mira knelt beside him, trying to calm him, but he kept repeating the same words. He remembers us. He remembers the children of Earth. The light from the central platform dimmed slowly. The figure inside the field moved slightly, its eyes opening for the first time in centuries. They glowed with faint blue light. Thomas shouted that they had to leave. He said the energy readings were unstable and could cause an explosion. Mira hesitated. She wanted to stay and understand, but the ground trembled beneath her feet. Dust and small stones began to fall from the ceiling. Ryan was still on the floor, whispering to himself. Thomas grabbed his arm and dragged him toward the stairs. Mira followed, looking back at the glowing figure. As they climbed, the voice called once more, softer this time. Do not fear. The memory of humanity shall rise again. They reached the upper chamber, gasping for breath. The trembling stopped and silence returned. Mira turned to the entrance of the tunnel, unsure what to do next. Ryan stood still, staring at the wall. He said the guardian was not angry. He said the tomb was testing them. Thomas told him to stop talking nonsense. Mira placed her hand on Ryan's shoulder and told him to rest. They sealed the passage once again and stepped outside into the burning sunlight. The desert looked calm, but the air carried a strange tension. Mira felt a new energy around her, as if the planet itself was awake. She looked at Thomas and said they had to report this to Earth Command. Thomas agreed, but his voice was low and uncertain. Ryan walked a few steps ahead, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He whispered that the whispers were growing clearer. He said they were no longer calling from the tomb. They were coming from the sky. Mira stared at him in silence. She turned her eyes toward the distant dunes. Something about the horizon shimmered like heat waves. She wondered if something else had awakened beneath the desert. The forbidden tomb had spoken, and now it seemed the entire planet was listening. The morning after the second descent, the desert felt colder than usual. The wind blew softly across the dunes, carrying a dry hiss that sounded like faint breathing. Mira stood near the tent, staring at the horizon. She had not slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the blue glow of the guardian's eyes and heard the soft voice that spoke from the tomb. It was calm yet filled with power. She could not decide if it was warning them or welcoming them. Tomas worked quietly beside the communication tower, trying to repair the long-range antenna. He wanted to send a full report to Earth Command, but the signal was unstable. He muttered that the magnetic field of this region changed every few hours, making it impossible to transmit for long. Ryan sat beside a supply crate holding a small recording device. He replayed the voice from the tomb over and over, listening carefully. His eyes had a strange brightness, as if he understood something no one else could. Mira joined Thomas and asked if he managed to send a message. He shook his head and said the equipment failed again. She placed her hand on his shoulder and said they would try again later. Thomas looked at her with concern. He said she seemed distant, as if something was pulling her back toward the tomb. Mira smiled faintly and said she could not stop thinking about the symbols. They spoke of humans as if they were ancient beings who guided others. Thomas replied that such a story could not be real. Humans were still new among the stars. Mira said maybe history had forgotten its oldest chapter. By noon, the wind stopped. The air became still, and even the sand seemed to hold its breath. Ryan suddenly stood and said the whispers had returned. He pointed toward the tomb entrance. Mira felt a vibration under her feet, soft but steady. Thomas checked the scanner and found energy readings rising again from below. Mira decided they needed to go back inside before something happened that they could not control. Thomas protested, saying they should wait for backup. Ryan sided with Mira, saying the tomb was calling to them and they could not ignore it. With steady hands, Mira unsealed the entrance. Cold air rushed out, followed by a faint hum. The lights on their suits flickered but stayed on. One by one, they entered the darkness again. The tunnel walls shimmered faintly, as if reacting to their presence. Tomas felt uneasy. He noticed that the carvings seemed to have changed slightly. Where there were once static lines, there were now moving shapes. They looked like waves of light flowing toward the lower levels. They followed the same spiral path, but the deeper they went, the more the air felt alive. The hum grew louder. Ryan whispered that it sounded like a heartbeat. Mira led them into the wide chamber they had found before. The pillars glowed faintly with golden light now, and the platform in the center was fully open. The stairs leading down shone as if newly made. Mira felt as if the tomb had been asleep for ages and was now fully awake. She walked forward without hesitation. At the bottom of the stairs, the hall of statues awaited them. The figures looked different this time. Their armor gleamed, and the eyes that once seemed empty now had faint light within them. Thomas walked carefully, scanning each statue. He said the material was not stone or metal, but something between both, alive yet solid. Mira focused on the large black door at the end of the hall. It was still open. The blue light from within cast long shadows on the floor. The figure inside the chamber had not moved, but the glow around it had grown stronger. The air vibrated with quiet power. Mira stepped closer to the edge of the platform where the figure rested. The transparent field shimmered like water. She felt a strange warmth as she approached. Ryan moved beside her, whispering that the guardian was trying to speak again. Thomas stood near the statues, watching nervously. He felt the eyes following him as he moved. Mira placed her hand gently on the field, and for a brief moment, the surface rippled under her touch. A light flashed, and the guardian's eyes opened wide. The voice returned, louder and clearer than before. "Do not fear," it said. "You are the children of the first flame." Mira stepped back as the figure rose slowly from the platform. The field around it vanished, and the air shimmered with energy. The guardian stood tall, nearly 2 meters in height, wearing silver armor engraved with ancient human symbols. Its face was calm and human, but carried the weight of countless years. Thomas lifted his scanner, but it malfunctioned instantly. Ryan fell to one knee, overwhelmed by the presence before them. The guardian looked at each of them in silence, then spoke again. "You have awakened the chamber of memory. I am Aran, the last guardian of the first ones." His voice echoed across the hall like music mixed with thunder. Mira tried to speak, but found her voice weak. She finally asked who the first ones were. The guardian's expression softened. "They were your ancestors," he said. "The first travelers who crossed the stars when this galaxy was young. They taught and built and gave light to many worlds. But pride brought ruin and the stars turned against them. The guardians sealed their knowledge until the children of Earth were ready again." Mira's heart raced. She asked why they were chosen to open the tomb. Aaron replied, "Because your blood carries the mark of the first ones. The tomb recognized you. It woke to your presence." Thomas shook his head and said this could not be true. Aaron turned toward him and said gently, "You doubt because your world has forgotten. But the stars remember. Every human carries the echo of the first flame." Ryan rose slowly and asked what the whispers were. The guardian said they were the memories of those who came before, voices stored in the tomb guiding their descendants. The air glowed brighter as Aaron raised his hand. Images filled the hall. They showed humans standing beside alien allies, building cities among the stars. Then the images changed. War swept across worlds. Beings of shadow fought against humans and their friends. Entire planets burned. Mira watched in silence as the scenes ended, with a small group sealing great machines under the surface of different worlds. Aaron said those were the tombs of knowledge, created to protect humanity's legacy until the galaxy healed. Mira asked if others existed. Aaron nodded. Many, scattered across the stars. Each holds a part of what was lost. Tomas asked if the war still continued. Aaron said no, but the danger remained. The shadows are not gone. They sleep as I did, waiting for light to wake them. Ryan stepped closer and said that the whispers outside had changed since they opened the tomb. Aaron replied, "The signal you feel has reached beyond this world. Others will come. Some will seek truth, others power." Mira felt a chill run through her. She asked if they should close the tomb again. Aaron looked at her with calm eyes. "It cannot be closed now. The memory has been restored. Your people must decide what to do with it." The guardian's body began to fade slightly, his form turning transparent. He said, "I am a shadow of what once was. My duty is complete. But the vault of the first ones lies below. It can rebuild or destroy. Choose wisely, children of Earth." The light dimmed as Aaron's form faded into the air. The hall grew quiet again. Thomas looked around in disbelief. Ryan whispered that the guardian would return when humanity was ready. Mira stood still, feeling the weight of his words. She looked toward the stairs leading even deeper below the platform. There was a passage there that had not been visible before. It glowed faintly, waiting to be explored. Thomas said they should leave immediately and call for a full research team. He feared what more they might awaken. Ryan disagreed. He said they should finish what they started, that the vault might hold the secret to human origins. Mira listened to both. Her heart wanted to continue, but her mind knew Thomas was right. She said they would take a short rest and then decide. They returned up the stairs in silence. Behind them, the guardian's chamber pulsed softly, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. When they reached the surface, the sky had changed. A faint ring of light circled the horizon. The air shimmered as if charged with invisible energy. Thomas said the readings were rising again. Ryan said it was not danger but a call. Mira looked up and saw small shapes moving far above the desert, like ships hidden by distance. She felt the truth settle in her chest. The tomb had sent a signal. Someone or something had heard it. As night fell, the wind returned. It carried soft voices across the sand, not whispers of warning but songs of memory. Mira sat near the fire, watching the tomb's dark entrance. Thomas wrote reports on his tablet and Ryan stared into the stars. None of them spoke for a long time. The desert around them felt alive and the ground hummed faintly under their feet. Mira thought about the Guardian's final words. Humanity was being tested. The tomb had opened its secrets not to one person but to all of them. Somewhere across the galaxy, old powers were stirring. She promised herself she would face whatever came next, not as a scientist but as a human carrying the flame of those who came before. The wind grew stronger, and the sand swirled around the camp. From deep within the tomb, a golden light flashed once before fading again. The forbidden tomb had not finished its story. It had only just begun to awaken. The golden light from the rising coffin filled the entire hall. The walls shimmered like glass, showing shapes of human faces and strange star patterns. Mira covered her eyes with one hand as the light grew brighter. Thomas stepped back, raising his scanner, but the device started flashing red and then went silent. Ryan stared in amazement as the stone coffin opened, releasing a warm glow that spread across the chamber like sunlight. From within the light appeared the figure of a man. He was tall, dressed in ancient armor that looked like a mix of metal and crystal. His expression was calm but strong. His eyes glowed faintly, not with anger but with purpose. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the hall clear and steady. "Do not fear," he said. "You have awakened the last guardian of this place." The team froze in silence. Mira took a cautious step forward. She felt both curiosity and respect for the being before her. "Who are you?" she asked. "And what is this tomb?" The figure looked at her with a faint smile. "I am Aaron, guardian of the first legacy. This tomb is not a place of death but a vault of memory. You stand inside the resting place of the first ones," Ryan whispered softly. "First ones? Who are they?" Aaron turned his gaze toward the walls. The shining glass shifted and formed images of planets, cities, and great ships flying through the stars. "Long before your written history," he began, "humans were not limited to one world. Your kind crossed galaxies, bringing peace and knowledge to younger civilizations. The first ones were your ancestors, the ones who built what was later forgotten." Thomas stared at the moving images, unable to speak. The ships shown on the walls were massive, unlike anything known in modern human history. "You mean humans were already in space long before Earth's records?" he asked. Aaron nodded. "Yes, but war came. Great powers rose against one another and knowledge turned into weapons. When the galaxy burned, the Guardians sealed the legacy so that the chaos would not return. This tomb was created to hide the truth until humans were ready to learn again. Mira listened carefully. Then why now? Why did it wake for us? Aaron raised his hand toward them. The light shifted again, showing a beam scanning their faces. The tomb recognized your kind. Your blood carries the mark of the builders. When you entered, the systems tested your DNA, your will, and your unity. The whispers you heard were the tomb's voice seeking to confirm your humanity. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. Those whispers called our names, he said. It knew who we were. The tomb has known all who came before, Aaron answered. Many tried to enter, but they were not of your kind. Only humans could awaken the Guardian. That is why I stand before you now. The air grew heavier as Aaron's tone changed. But listen carefully. The vault beneath this hall holds great power. It is knowledge that can rebuild worlds or destroy them. The choice belongs to those who awaken it. Mira's heart pounded as she realized what that meant. Humanity's forgotten power, locked beneath their feet, could change the course of history. She took a step closer. What kind of power is it? She asked. Aaron's image turned slightly dimmer as if his strength was fading. It is the sum of all human creation. Energy systems that could feed entire worlds. Healing technology that could end disease and weapons that could burn stars. That is why it was sealed. To guard against greed and fear. Thomas frowned. If this knowledge is so dangerous, maybe it is better left hidden. Aaron shook his head. Hiding truth does not stop destruction. It only delays it. The galaxy is changing again. New forces rise in the dark, and soon they will seek this place. That is why I must pass this warning to you. Protect what you have found. Learn before you use. Trust your unity, for only that will save your kind. The walls brightened again, showing ancient human colonies falling to ruin, cities turning silent, and fleets lost in storms of fire. Mira could feel the weight of history pressing on her chest. Humanity had once reached greatness, only to fall into silence. Ryan stepped closer to the Guardian's light. Can we see the vault? He asked with hope. Aaron looked at him, then at Mira. The vault will open when your people are ready. For now, I will show you only a memory. The light expanded and filled the hall. Suddenly, the explorers stood on what looked like a balcony overlooking a great city, under a sky filled with two suns. Towers of silver metal reached the clouds, and thousands of humans walked the streets below. Ships lifted from docks that floated in the air. The sight was breathtaking. This was Terra Nova, Aaron said, one of the first human colonies beyond your home world. Here the builders taught peace, invention, and exploration. The galaxy thrived under their guidance until fear took hold. Alliances broke and war began. When the flames ended, few remained to remember, so we sealed this place and many others like it. The vision faded slowly, leaving them back in the silent tomb. Ryan's eyes were wide with awe. Thomas lowered his head, speechless. Mira stood still, her thoughts racing. She finally understood the importance of their discovery. Aaron looked at them one last time. You must carry this truth back to your world, he said. Tell them who they were. Remind them what they can become again. But beware, you are not alone in this galaxy. Others have waited for the tomb to open. They will come for what you have found. Mira felt a rush of determination. We will protect it, she promised. We will make sure humanity remembers. The Guardian's image flickered as his energy weakened. Then my purpose is complete. I return to rest until the next calling. May the light guide your path. As the last word echoed, the golden glow faded away. The hall turned silent again, with only the soft hum of the ancient machines remaining. The coffin closed itself and the walls lost their shine, turning back into plain stone. Ryan looked around in disbelief. Was that real? He asked quietly. Mira nodded. Yes, and now we have a duty. The world must know the truth, but we must be careful. Not everyone will understand or believe. Thomas examined the chamber one last time. The Guardian said others will come. We need to seal the entrance again before they find us. They began to gather their gear. Mira stored the recordings and scans and secured data units. Before leaving, she placed her hand on the stone coffin. It felt warm, almost alive. She whispered a silent promise to protect what they had found. As they exited the hall, the tomb lights dimmed behind them. The air felt lighter, but the weight of their discovery remained heavy on their minds. The whispers that once filled the corridors were now silent, replaced by a calm stillness as if the tomb itself was watching them leave. When they reached the surface, the desert winds had grown stronger. The twin moons of Thelon shone in the dark sky. The team stood at the entrance, staring at the endless sands that stretched in all directions. Mira turned to the others. "We are part of something far bigger than we ever imagined," she said. "Aaron's warning must not be ignored. Humanity must rise again, not to rule but to remember." Thomas nodded. "Let us make sure the wrong people never find this place." Ryan tightened his grip on the data pack. "We should go back to the camp and send a message to Earth Command." They began their journey back, their footprints marking a path across the glowing sand. None of them spoke for a while. Each of them carried thoughts too deep for words. Above them, the stars shone brighter than before, as if the universe itself was listening. In the shadows of the dunes far from their sight, something moved. A faint metallic sound echoed through the night. It was a small drone shaped like an eye, observing the team from a distance. Its red light blinked once, then vanished into the darkness. Mira looked back one last time at the tomb. She knew this was only the beginning. The discovery of the Guardian would not stay hidden for long. Somewhere beyond the stars, others had already felt the awakening. The whispers of the tomb had reached further than they realized. The explorers returned to their camp, unaware that their actions had already changed the course of human destiny. The tomb slept once again beneath the desert, guarding its secrets until humanity proved itself worthy of the legacy it once lost. The desert sun rose slowly above the red dunes of Thalon. Mira, Thomas, and Ryan stood at the edge of their camp, looking back toward the tomb. The previous days had changed them. The knowledge they had uncovered, the Guardian they had awakened, and the whispers that had filled the chambers weighed heavily on their minds. Mira adjusted her equipment and said, "We must secure the tomb and report what we found. The world must know, but we also have to protect it." Tomas nodded. "I agree. There is too much power here to leave unguarded. If the wrong people find it, it could be disastrous." Ryan remained silent, staring toward the horizon where the tomb's dark entrance lay. He whispered softly, "The Guardian said the vault can rebuild worlds or destroy them. We have to be careful." They began walking across the dunes, carrying equipment and data. The air was still, almost like the desert itself was holding its breath. Mira led the way, feeling the presence of the tomb in every step. Even beneath the shifting sands, she sensed the Guardian's light and the echoes of the voices that had guided them. As they reached the tomb entrance, they worked quickly. Mira placed a series of energy locks and sensors at the top of the spiral tunnel. Thomas secured heavy mechanical seals, making it nearly impossible for anyone to enter without proper authorization. Ryan activated recording devices that would capture any motion or vibration near the tomb. When the final lock was in place, Mira stepped back and looked at the dark entrance. The tomb seemed calm now. The whispers were gone, replaced by a quiet hum that felt alive. Mira touched the stone arch one last time. The carvings pulsed faintly as if acknowledging her presence. She whispered, "We will return, but only when we are ready." The team left the tomb behind, climbing the dunes to return to their camp. The wind blew softly, carrying sand across their path. For a moment they walked in silence, each lost in thought. Mira thought about the Guardian's words, about humanity's past, and about the choices that lay ahead. Tomas worried about the dangers they might face if anyone discovered the tomb. Ryan wondered if the whispers would call again and when. At the camp, they prepared to send their report. Thomas tried the communication array again, and this time the signal held. Mira activated the transmitter and sent their data to Earth Command. The message included their scans, recordings, and a detailed description of the Guardian. They encoded the coordinates carefully, ensuring only authorized channels could access them. As the transmission completed, the team stood quietly, listening to the soft winds of the desert. Mira said, "This is only the beginning. The tomb is more than a ruin. It is a reminder of what humanity once was and what it can become again." Tomas sighed. "I never imagined discovering something like this in my lifetime. It feels larger than anything we know, larger than Earth itself." Ryan nodded. "The Guardian said others will come. We are not the only ones seeking the tomb. Whoever arrives next may not be as kind or careful as we are." Mira looked at the horizon. The sands shifted slightly, revealing the tops of stone structures that had been buried. It seemed the desert itself was changing, responding to the awakening of the tomb. She realized the world was no longer quiet, that the tomb had sent a signal beyond the planet. Somewhere other eyes were watching. The team decided to rest for the night. They camped near a cluster of rocks, setting up temporary shelters. The twin moons of Thalon rose in the sky, casting pale light across the desert. Mira lay on the sand, staring at the stars. She remembered the glowing murals, the Guardian's voice, and the vision of the ancient human colonies. Humanity had once been great, and now it had a chance to rise again. Thomas stayed awake, checking the equipment. He scanned the dunes repeatedly, but saw nothing unusual. Still, he felt a presence, like the desert itself was alive. Ryan remained quiet, listening. Occasionally, he whispered words from the Guardian's message, repeating them as if committing them to memory. The next day, they began their journey back toward their ship. The path across the dunes was long and tiring, but each step carried a sense of purpose. Mira thought about the vault beneath the tomb. The knowledge contained there was immense. It could change science, medicine, and energy production for the entire human race. Yet she also remembered the warning. Such power in the wrong hands could destroy worlds. As they traveled, they discussed plans for the future. Thomas suggested returning with a larger team of scientists and security personnel. Mira agreed, but emphasized the importance of caution. Ryan spoke about preparing humanity to understand the legacy of the first ones before the vault was opened fully. Each conversation reflected the weight of their discovery and the responsibility it carried. On the second day of travel, the sky changed subtly. Faint shapes moved above the horizon, just beyond the dunes. Mira noticed them first and pointed. Thomas raised his scanner. The readings were faint but clear. Objects were moving at great speed, approaching the tomb. Mira felt a chill. "Others have heard the signal," she said quietly. "We are not alone." Ryan tightened his grip on the data packs. "The Guardian warned us. Whoever comes next may not understand the tomb as we do. We must protect it at all costs." They quickened their pace, moving carefully across the dunes. Mira led them through hidden passes and valleys, avoiding open stretches where they could be seen. The approaching figures were too far to identify, but the energy readings suggested they were intelligent and powerful. By late afternoon, they reached a plateau that offered a clear view of the tomb from a distance. Mira looked down at the dark entrance. The light of the Guardian's chamber no longer shone, but the energy readings from beneath the sands were still present. The tomb was quiet but alive. Thomas checked the scanners again. "We cannot risk returning tonight," he said. "We need to regroup, plan, and ensure no one can follow us back." Mira nodded. "We will, but the tomb will not stay silent for long. Others will come, and we must be ready to meet them." As night fell, the explorers set up camp on the plateau. They built small shelters from rocks and sand, keeping watch over the tomb in the distance. The twin moons of Thalon reflected off the dunes, creating a silver glow. Mira kept a vigil, thinking of the Guardian's words, of humanity's past, and of the choices they must make. Ryan sat nearby, still holding the recordings. "Do you think humanity is ready?" he asked softly. Mira thought for a moment. "Not yet, but we can help them be ready. The vault is not just power, it is a lesson. It is proof of what we can achieve when we work together and respect what came before. That is the message we must carry." Thomas looked up at the stars. "I never thought humans could rise again like that. But seeing the tomb, the Guardian, and the history, I understand now. We are part of something greater. We must protect it and guide the future." In the distance, the desert remained silent but alive. Faint hums from beneath the sands hinted at the tomb's presence. Mira stood and looked at the horizon. "We will return when the time is right," she said. "For now, we prepare, we learn, and we protect. Humanity has a second chance, and we will not fail." As the first light of morning touched the dunes, a distant shape moved across the horizon. The team did not notice it at first. Then Ryan pointed toward it, eyes wide. "Something is coming," he said. Mira nodded, her hand resting on the data pack. "It is time. The tomb has sent a signal and the galaxy has heard. We must be ready for whoever comes next." The explorers continued their journey toward their ship, their minds focused, their hearts determined. They carried not only the memory of the tomb and the Guardian, but also the responsibility of humanity's hidden past. They knew that the coming days would test them, and that the whispers in the dark had only begun. Somewhere far above, an unknown ship responded to the tomb's signal. Its occupants were intelligent and patient, already sensing the power that humans had awakened. The race to uncover humanity's lost legacy had begun. Mira looked down at the desert one last time before stepping onto the transport vehicle. "We will protect what we found," she said quietly. "We will ensure the past guides the future." The vehicle lifted off the sands, carrying the explorers away from the tomb, leaving the forbidden tomb where explorers once heard whispers in the dark. The desert returned to silence, but beneath the surface the tomb pulsed softly, waiting for the next chapter of humanity to arrive. The story of the first ones, of the Guardian, and of humanity's hidden legacy was not over. It had only begun.